Welcome to a series of short interviews about the non-celibate or ngak'phang tradition of Vajrayana Buddhism with Ngak'chang Rinpoche and Khandro Dechen. They are the current holders of the Aro, a non-monastic family lineage originating in Tibet in the late 1800s, with the great female dKar, Khyungchen Aro Lingma. Although born in the West, Ngak'chang Rinpoche travelled to the Himalayas in 1971, aged 19, where he met with Düd'jom Rinpoche, Jig'drèl Yeshé Dorje, the head of the Nyingma tradition. Düd'jom Rinpoche confirmed the childhood visions of Ngak'chang Rinpoche and recognised him as an incarnation of Aro Yeshé, the son and heir of Khyungchen Aro Lingma. On that first visit, Düd'jom Rinpoche ordained Ngak'chang Rinpoche as a ngakpa and charged him with the responsibility of establishing the gö-kar-chang-lo'i, the community of ngak'phang practitioners in the West. Ngak'chang Rinpoche and his wife and co-teacher Khandro Dechen have dedicated over 40 years to doing that, and during this time have met with numerous ngakpa lamas. Their main teachers were all themselves ngakpas and major lineage-holders of the Nyingma tradition: Düd'jom Rinpoche, Dilgo Khyentsé Rinpoche, Chhi'mèd Rinpoche and Kyabjé Düd'jom Rinpoche. During that time, as well as practicing in this ngak'phang tradition, Ngak'chang Rinpoche and Khandro Dechen have studied the history of the gö-kar-chang-lo'i right back beyond the first spread of Buddhism in Tibet to the time of the Mahasiddhas in India, and spoken with many lamas on that subject, including Chakdu Tulku Rinpoche, Purtak Rinpoche, Minling Trichen Rinpoche, and their great friend Lama Tarchin Rinpoche, who was the lineage holder of the Repkong Ngakpa lineage. When Ngak'chang Rinpoche and Khandro Dechen met with Dungzi Trinli Norba Rinpoche, he was very supportive of their work in establishing the tradition of ngakmas and ngakpas in the West, and gave them a long life wish path for Kyabjé Düd'jom Rinpoche and Joma Sampal Déchen, in which he elucidates the history and practice of the ngak'phang lineage. In this first interview, Ngak'chang Rinpoche and Khandro Dechen explain the terms gö-kar-chang-lo'i and ngak'phang tradition, discuss the misnomers lay tantrika and tantric renunciate, introduce the yanas, and explain Buddhism as a religion of method rather than truth. So, good morning, Rinpoche and Khandro Dechen. Can I start by asking what the ngak'phang tradition and the gö-kar-chang-lo'i are?
The word gö-kar-chang-lo'i, if I can break it down, gö-kar means white shamtab or white religious skirt, because both the monastics and the gö-kar-chang-lo'i wear a shamtab, which is this pleated skirt. So gö-kar is the white one, chang-lo is uncut hair. Or chang-lo, the word chang comes from willow tree, the way the willow hangs down. This Sangha began in India with the Mahasiddhas and was a development in Buddhism into what's commonly known as Tantra, or Vajrayana is the word, when we're discussing the different yanas of Buddhism. So it began with the Mahasiddhas. And it's a non-celibate lineage of ordination that runs parallel with monasticism. And so they're called ngakpas and ngakmas. The word ngak is mantra, and pa is the person who uses it, or ma is the female person who uses mantra. It's a really, mantra user is an abbreviation for practitioner of Tantra. And the vows are based in the Tantras rather than in the Sutras. So monastic ordination is based in the Sutras, and the ngak'phang ordination is based in the Tantras.
When did this style of practice come to Tibet?
So in Tibet, the tradition, the ngak'phang tradition, came into being in the 8th century, which was the time when Guru Rinpoche, Pamsambhava, brought the Mahasiddha tradition from India to Tibet. And at that time, there were two equal parallel streams of practice that came into being, and that was the monks and nuns, the monastic renunciate sangha, and the ngak'phang sangha, the ngakpas and ngakmas. And these two traditions have continued to practice side by side to the present day. The monks and nuns practice in the religious institutions, the monasteries and nunneries. The ngakpas and ngakmas could be practicing in a variety of different places, such as remote caves, remote hermitages, ngakpa dratsangs, which are ngakpa colleges, and also in the villages, alongside the village people. If I can say something about the Ngak'phang Sangha having been misnamed as lay tantrikas for the last century, this word lay means not professional, not a professional religious practitioner who leads practice. Now, the monks have always been recognized as being professional religious leaders, religious practitioners, but the Ngak'phang Sangha has been somehow labelled or saddled with this label of the lay tantrika. But in fact, they are professional religious practitioners. They devote their entire lives to practice and serving the population.
So lay is really not an accurate term to describe a gö-kar-chang-lo'i practitioner.
One of the issues with the word lay is that in a Tibetan context, someone at some time got hold of the idea that the word lay means non-celibate. The word lay does not mean non-celibate in American English, British English, or in any European, Eastern European or Scandinavian language, because we've checked, and the definition is precisely the same in every language: not professional, not of the clergy. That's all it means. It does not mean non-celibate. If you use the word lay to mean non-celibate, then of course it's pejorative to Judaism, it's pejorative to Islam, it's pejorative to all the Protestant Christian schools. So you can't actually use this word. It's incorrect over such a broad area that it really should be discontinued. It has no meaning.
Sometimes we see ngakpas referred to as tantric renunciates. Could you comment on the accuracy of this view?
We came across this in an academic paper some time ago, them being described as professional renunciates. This is a general misunderstanding that has come out of the cultural idea that the Sutrayana paradigm covers everything. And it comes out of a misunderstanding of the yanas, of the Buddhist vehicles, because renunciation is the principle of Sutrayana. It's not the principle of Vajrayana. The principle there is transformation, so you can't describe tantrikas or the gö-kar-chang-lo'i as renunciates, because they're not. This does not mean, of course, that they cannot practice renunciation, because for any practitioner of any vehicle, all the other vehicles are open for practice. This means, in terms of asceticism, that a ngakpa or ngakma could be an ascetic, but that would be a choice. It wouldn't be part of the vows to be ascetic or renunciate. This applies to the monastics. Now, the monastics can also practice Tantra in a Sutrayana context. So this is where a lot of the misunderstanding comes from, that practitioners are not necessarily renunciates. Once you think they are, then it's hard to understand what they're doing because they don't conform to a renunciate path.
Is this because Buddhism as a whole is so often mistakenly viewed as renunciate?
Well, yes, that's entirely true, because when people think about Buddhism, they basically think about Sutrayana, Mahayana and Hinayana. They don't think about Vajrayana, and so they assume that it's going to conform to Sutrayana, and that's what's led to a great deal of misunderstanding in people.
There's also this confusion that feeds into this between the word renounce and the word reject, because all religious practitioners reject samsara, the mechanism whereby we make ourselves unhappy, but that doesn't necessarily mean a renunciate path. It can mean a transformational path. So it's this confusion between rejection and renunciation of samsara.
Misunderstanding about the differences between the yanas seems to lead to great confusion.
Oh, it's massive. We spend a lot of our teaching lives going over the same material for people, trying to get them to understand the difference between the yanas, how those yanas are seen in the different schools, because it's not a simple mode. You see, in the Nyingma tradition, you have 9 yanas. In the other schools, Sakya and Kagyu, you have 3 yanas. In the Gelug, you have 2 yanas. You have Hinayana and Mahayana, and then the Mahayana is subdivided into exoteric and esoteric Mahayana. The esoteric Mahayana being Vajrayana. Now, in this paradigm, of course, what happens is that Vajrayana is understood through Sutrayana. And that seems to be quite widespread as an understanding, but that is only true within the Gelug school, where it has a certain function. In the Sakya and Kagyu schools, you have 3 yanas, Hinayana, Mahayana and Vajrayana, and there Vajrayana has its own base. One of the other things that's not understood is what a yana actually is. And it's not simply a different trend in Buddhism. Each yana has a base, a path and a result. And according to what the base is, the path changes. The result is always the same, but it's where you start with it. So Vajrayana starts with the realization of emptiness. That's the base. And so everything that comes from that base is then characterized in terms of how form arises from emptiness. So Vajrayana is not geared towards realizing emptiness, it's geared towards realizing non-duality. Sutrayana is based on realizing emptiness, which is why it's a renunciate path, and why Vajrayana is a transformational path, because it begins from emptiness. So if one doesn't understand the base, path and fruit of each yana, then one will not understand what the contradictions are between the yanas. Once you understand that, then the contradictions are simply the result of method. Like a swimming costume is one method, a fur coat is another method. One may have issues with fur coats, of course. Let's say the polystyrene or whatever the modern politically correct version of that is supposed to be. One keeps you warm in the cold, and one you go into the water with it. Whether you actually need the costume or not is another matter, but there you are. You know, they contradict each other. But there's nothing wrong with either. They just have a purpose. And one of the issues around this is the whole idea of truth. We tend to approach most religions as being about truth, because that is the main thing with the three religions of the book: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and they deal with truth. Buddhism does not really deal with truth. It deals with method, and the method is what enables you to arrive at truth. But it's not a religion of truth, it's a religion of method, and methods are different, and methods contradict each other. They contradict each other because they achieve different ends and they work with different principles. So this misunderstanding, once you think that Buddhism is a religion of truth, then you have to imagine that anything that is stated always holds true. And if you think that, then you continually misunderstand things, particularly within Vajrayana.